Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. So I'm also part of Biopeaks, and if you saw that first presentation that Prashant did about putting up that hospital, the version 3, well, I have the privilege of being one of the people who are building that with him. So, let me start with that. So it's Biopeaks today because we've come together to actually create this. Okay, so while we're waiting for that, I get 2 extra minutes. So let me quickly introduce myself. For the past 20 years, we've been working on sustainability, health, and then performance on top. And today's conversation is actually interesting. What I wanted to actually share with you is actually the piece on the performance part. Because if you think about our connectivity and how we are looking at sustainability, why? Because everything comes from the soil, everything comes from water, becomes food, and then from food, it becomes, what we consume, and what we consume becomes us. So if we don't actually look at that whole picture, then we're only seeing it from a very small perspective, right? And even if you look at the microbiome, we're just talking about the microbiome so far just from the perspective of the gut. But what I'm also sharing with you is that there's way more than that, right? I mean, we have microbiome in the soil, we have microbiome in the water, air, everything. And for some reason, we don't take that into cognizance. So I thought today what I will share with you is a story of an Olympic athlete, right? Because, I mean, we're sitting with some of the greatest clinical minds over here, so I don't need to go to that route. I want to share with you what this whole performance paradox is for me. Today, we have so many athletes, and everybody always epitomises these guys of being, at the peak of fitness, the peak of health. Actually, you'll be shocked to know they're probably the guys who are going to die first if you look at their data as to what's actually happening. It's the antithesis of everything that's longevity. And it always occurs to me that, you have this weightlifter who's like full of muscle, or a bodybuilder full of muscle, and then you got this guy who's starving himself sitting on top of the Himalayas. And then that is sort of the image that you have in terms of this continuum of performance and, of this idea of what we feel of longevity. And that's what I want to bring across in this idea of what this performance paradox was, right? So let me quickly get into that. It's incredible because I want to tell you a story about the athletes because we work with Olympians and we're working with all the athletes. And we have this unusual, I suppose, a bunch of people that we actually have because we have a clinic and we've had it for 12 years. So we have athletes, we have recreational athletes, we have aging populace, we have kids, and then we have the aging populace. For us, it's just data that comes in. And what we, in the beginning, decided to do is as we didn't have Indian data, we didn't have a reference point that we wanted to use that was, built on a Caucasian model. And I'll share with you some of the processes that I'm going to be talking about. But actually, if you think about what an athlete does, right, he basically puts himself to the highest amount of privation, right, with the minimal amount, with the macronutrient mix. I don't know, I think it's an obsession with protein, if you know what I mean, right? And nobody's talking about phytonutrients, polyphenols. All that is like a forgotten dream. You pump him with as much medication as he possibly can to win the medal, right? And then after that, if he wins it, good, and if he doesn't, okay, which is then very interesting, isn't it? And who has the greatest amount of advertising today? These guys. Who do you think the populace is following? Those guys. So if you say, what my idea of fitness is this, we are so far away from N of 1, it is actually unbelievable, right? So that's why I wanted to start with this kind of idea, saying that all our ideas, have to be rethought. And I love what IIS is doing here with the longevity thing, because we are playing discovery, we're not making assumptions. And I think this is the best part of the beginning of what the leapfrog that we will make, I think not just for Asia, I think for South Asia. So let me take you to what we do, right? So this is sort of our personalized approach when somebody walks in. And by the way, we'll do this for any single person who walks in. So let's not look at them as athlete or non-athlete. Say any of you walked in, and that's the same sort of process that you're going to go through, right? You do a detailed questionnaire. Now, the one thing that is not said over here is economics. Okay, a lot of this is decided by economics. Okay, So you may not be able to offer everything to everybody, but you know what? It's criminal not to be able to offer it. What I mean to say is like, if this is available everywhere in the world, why don't we have it? I mean, it should be accessible. Then it's a choice of saying, I don't want it, I want it, or it's economically viable or not viable, right? And I think that was the first thing that we wanted to bring. I remember Kumar was here, and 10 years ago we wanted to do a microbiome test because I was like, yeah, I think this is going to be amazing. I think it took us, 75,000 to 95,000 to send that test, and we had to send it across to the States to get the sequencing done, and then we brought it back. That was the first test 10 years ago. And I'm just talking about, what we talk about democratization. Today we've seen so many microbiome companies. We see the plethora of possibility that's actually happened, and the costs are going to come down. But look at the possibility. We as Indians can test our own microbiome in India, and IISc may actually give us an idea about what's actually happening with our own stuff, right? As opposed to making gross assumptions. Here's a good one. I think out of maybe 700 tests that we've seen, I've seen Akkermansia twice. So I'm just saying, and then everybody's talking about Akkermansia in the West. Some of the most peddled probiotics in the West are Akkermansia. And I haven't even seen Akkermansia over here, right? Now, my point is, if I put Akkermansia into somebody's gut, maybe that's going to be a problem, right? So it's very interesting how we have to err on the side of caution. Again, it's been a very interesting journey. Yes, and this is everything that we do. So see, VO2 max is amazing. Mortality, VO2 max has direct correlation to it. Nobody will do something simple like that. We'd rather do biological aging. Why? You don't have to do anything. It's much easier. We took all the hard routes. That's VO2 max, right? The DEXA, body composition. No way you can cheat that, because then you have your bone density, you have your musculature up to 1 milligram, right? You can't cheat that. Okay, so that's why we went for those things. The metabolites. I am so happy that Bipin went before me, because he already brought the metabolites up. So now, that absolves me of that responsibility. But he's absolutely right. The reason we said metabolites is it gives you so much of information. But we started collecting this 10 years ago, and Dr. Akash, who actually helps me with the LCMS and all that work, is also here. And we brought it down because we are like, we don't have this. How do we know what we're degrading in our body? How do we know how we're metabolizing something? Remember, let's start with the simplest things. I have all this food I've eaten during the week. I know what they've eaten because we've taken photographs of everything. We do the metabolite test in the morning. I have some data. Is it better than no data? Yeah, because I'm not going to do a clinical intervention. What I do need to know is how are they processing the things that they're processing? Simple, right? The more data I have, and it's actually less costly than the genetics. It's less costly than the microbiome. Suddenly I have actionable data that I can, with some level of, I suppose, relevance, make sure they can see a change. And remember, these guys are either running for their lives or doing something where all of this is viable. And I can see it because the tests speak to each other. Okay, if you look at respiration or you look at all of that, you can actually see body composition change if you change something. It's tangibles. You can test that over and again. Those don't cost as much. The genetics are a one-time cost, right? So again, just to tell you about how we were using that, right? And what our team would do is one thing. We took out all the silos in our team. So we have a very interesting way of approaching it. We said, nobody will decide what's right, because otherwise, generally over here, the senior-most person just gets authority immediately. So we said, for the sake of argument, we started this process called Genius. It was called the Group Genius process. It was actually based on theater and improvisation. And the reason I brought this up is because I said, how can we, even for 10 minutes, freely ideate? Just to see whether there are other options. And the product that you're going to see on the board today is basically that, right? Let me move on because I know I don't have much time. Look, we have all the tests, all the data and all that, but that's for another conversation. I just want to share with you the experience and the knowledge base of it. I have no idea why that is happening, but that can't be good. Okay, let's just move to the next slide. That's very similar to what I was talking about anyway. Okay, so this is the case that I want to talk about. No, wait a second. Can I go? Can I go back? Yeah. Yeah, this seems to work better. Yeah, is that better? Yeah. So this is an elite athlete. 3 years of chronic pain. By the way, these are one of the guys playing for us. They're playing the Olympics, yeah? So you've got to understand, he's had 3 years of chronic pain. Okay, gut issues with flare up, steroid medication, access to the best sports science doctors in the world, nothing. Why? Because once we start viewing this from a clinical lens, it's done. He was put on steroid medications, right? I don't even have to tell you what happens with NSAIDs and PPEs if you're on it regularly, right? So he is superb as an athlete and talent off the charts, okay? But here's what we found in that. And by the way, I didn't put all the things because, again, this is lack of space, lack of time, too many tests, right? But happy to discuss that with you guys whenever you need to. Now, what was really interesting is, at the end of the day, it just came down to one thing, and I'm going to go to the next slide because of lack of thing. It's just histamine. You know why? Every single thing that you saw over there in terms of gut issue, if I have an acid reflux issue, there is a receptor for histamine just there. But you know what people did? They looked at every single one of that as a different problem. They did not look at it as a comprehensive situation coming from one issue. What they did is said, oh, you know, he's got acidity. What do we do? Let's give him PPEs. Okay. If you look at this H1, that's in your blood vessels, right? I mean, you're looking at edema. So here I go. I have swelling. All my lymph nodes are all swollen. What do? You know, that's okay. Why don't we just give him NSAIDs? Easy, right? He can go and play tomorrow. Now imagine, they did that to him for 8 years. Now, here's the interesting loop of here, what happens next. If you think about it, there's something, these are these two things I want to share with you very quickly. And here's the incredible part of why we all have to come together. That bottom enzyme is an oxidase that actually removes histamine from the gut, only from the gut, right? The other one is from your cells, and that's a methylated one, right? If you look at this whole pathway, I think it tells you a story. That's what's happening in his gut. That's what's happening elsewhere that you see over here. But somebody treated each one of those, right? And all it was this one issue. So what did we do? We just helped him get his vitamins and minerals in such a state that he was methylated.
Can you please wind up quickly? Otherwise, there'll be no time for questions.
Sure. Yeah. I will wind up very quickly because so this was basically the whole situation, right? Just to give you that. And yeah, I mean, I suppose we're going to start with questions because that was more or less it. And yeah, I mean, that's how we have to think about everything because that's what we're thinking about. So I'll leave it to you and leave it open to questions.
So we can take a couple of questions. We have 3.5 minutes. Any questions from the audience? Okay, please keep your questions short, okay? Yeah, and answers also short.
I think that was for me.
Yeah, that was me. Yeah, sure.
I can try for a question. Very interesting, and I'm glad that I was here and didn't miss Biopeak. To begin with, all these data points, definitely you are getting to network effects and, again, systems biology approach you're taking here. Interesting to find out in athletes are not like everyday humans. And as you said, they might be much worse than everyday humans. How do we see, because of course our bodies are not utilized and our metabolisms, when we say metabolism is a generic term, but energy consumptions are very different. So what is true for a high endurance athlete might not be true for a housewife or might not be true for an office worker. How do we take that into account here?
Spot it. I think like when somebody walks in, they're always walking in with what they want. And you know, there's this amazing thing about neurology, right? People already know what they want, and there's a reason why they want it. It's really important to actually listen to them. And for example, if you come in and say, I have a back pain, there's a reason why you have a back pain. It could be a high threat response, right? You wouldn't even think about something like that. Sorry.
Okay, enough.
Oh wow. How do you take, look, again, this is refreshing and probably the right way to treat this. I have an athlete at home and we face this every day because it's very topical. Someone does something, someone else does something else. How do you take something like this approach mainstream? How do you scale it?
I think this is the AI part and everything else that Prashant was talking about. In fact, this is what we're going to build. Because we have 10 years of data, we have 1,000 clients with all the multiple iterations and interventions. That's what's different, because we just went and did it. I think there's enough of knowledge. We need to apply it. I think that is a different approach, right? That's what I took.
Yes, there's a question at the back. Can you pass?
I'm Dan from Instam. So a quick question. So see, this becomes a very personalized, right? Each athlete is going to be very different and each should be treated very differently. So how you're going to make a kind of a generalized medicine of that?
I don't want to make a
So
generalized
that's
thing.
what. So when he asked the question like, how do you going to make,
I think somebody earlier said it, right? It's that the mass, wait, he said something amazing. It was, what was it? It's the mass customization. You know what? It is. It is about machine learning and stuff. We couldn't have done this 10 years ago. Today we can. We have the data, we have the human being, we have the experiences, and we have Indian data, for sure. But that's the mass, customization. But I think that's where people like Serotonin, Project Serotonin, and IOM are working on their systems biology to be able to enable this.
I have a question actually, Shiva. There's a lot of research coming out on athletes actually aging faster. What do you think would be some of the reasons for that?
Oh, great. I mean, I just start with stress, because if you just look at their comped pathways, look, it's amazing, right? You would do this for somebody who's in depression, but nobody will do it for an athlete. And it is ridiculous, because you're talking about neuro pathways that have to be documented just to be able to see what kind of we never need to have mental disease, because we have the genetics today to show what kinetics of genes are there, how you're metabolizing your neurotransmitters. So why do we have an issue? I mean, we have an issue because we haven't just objectified it and done anything about it. 100% we can stop that, right? The issue is just, it's a choice.
Okay, I think any more questions? Okay, great. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Mr. Shiva Subramanian.